What is happening, baby? Welcome back to the Huddle Chat Sports Network's very own fantasy football huddle, presented as always by yours truly, Dallas Clark, as well as Danklyfe clothing brand. Today, we're going to get started off on the very first episode of the new season of the Huddle Chat Sports Fantasy Football Huddle, and I figure what a better place to start than with those top wide receivers. We're going to be going through the top 12 wide receivers today, continuing our coverage on the wide receivers and the other positions in the next few episodes, but I figured the wide receivers would be a great place to start in your draft research, strictly because it shows you how much has really changed in this offseason and how different the fantasy football landscape is going to look, at least throughout draft season. So without further ado, fill up your cup, roll something up, and let's get right into the very first episode of the 2024-2025 Fantasy Football Huddle season, the season where you hoist your trophy over all those other idiots in your fantasy football league. Starting off with our number one wide receiver, we're going to be talking about CeeDee Lamb from the Dallas Cowboys. I think with these top three wide receivers especially, they're fairly interchangeable. Nobody's going to be mad at you for taking some of these other wide receivers above CeeDee Lamb, but I got CeeDee Lamb number one after 181 targets, 135 receptions last season. He led the NFL in both of those categories. He's got very low levels of competition in that Dallas Cowboys wide receiver room. They added in Martavis Bryant this offseason, re-added in an aging Ezekiel Elliott, lost Tony Pollard, but other than that, they didn't really add anything else around CeeDee Lamb. So he's in the exact same situation that led him to be one of the best wide receivers in last season. Moving on to our number two wide receiver, we're going to be talking about Tyreek Hill from the Miami Dolphins. He led the NFL in receiving yards last year. The reason I personally don't have him above CeeDee Lamb, he's a little bit older than CeeDee Lamb, and there's more target competition around Tyreek Hill when you're looking at Jalen Waddle, Devon A-Chain, Mostert, all those other options that they do have on that Miami Dolphins roster right now, especially on that offensive side, keeps Tyreek Hill, in my opinion, a little bit lower than CeeDee Lamb, but nobody'd be mad at you at taking Tyreek or Jamar Chase, who I have number three. Now, I know last year was an off year for Jamar Chase, but he did have real bad struggles with the quarterback and Joe Burrow last season with his health. You knew about the calf injury coming into the season. Then in the second half of the season, they had the backup quarterback. But you're looking at Jamar Chase putting up career highs in receptions last season, and a large part of it was due to the fact that defenses weren't allowing the Bengals to throw as deep downfield as they usually do, and on top of it, they had the quarterback issues. So he thrives on that downfield production, and he didn't get it as much last year, but he definitely was able to counteract that with that career high in receptions. Also adding in that there's no Tyler Boyd. You also still have not got the extension for T. Higgins yet, so everything is looking really good for Jamar Chase right now. Moving on to number four wide receiver will be Amon-Ra St. Brown. After 119 receptions last season, he was the number four wide receiver in an efficiency standpoint. He's also an extremely reliable wide receiver. He's played 49 out of 51 career games that he's had in his NFL career so far, and this Detroit Lions team just continues to get better, and I like Amon-Ra St. Brown a lot. We're going to finish off this top tier of wide receivers with the top tier of wide receiver in Justin Jefferson. Some people have been putting Justin Jefferson, including myself, as the number one wide receiver these last few years, and Justin Jefferson has not lost any of his talent. He just lost his quarterback. It's an obvious quarterback downgrade. You're looking at him having J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold. Either option isn't the best that you would want for one of the elite wide receivers, but he is still an elite wide receiver. I just think that the Minnesota Vikings is going to be a less pass-heavy offense this season. Now, starting off that number two tier of wide receivers, we're going to be talking about Puka Nacua from the Los Angeles Rams. He emerged as the guy in Los Angeles last season, put up 105 receptions and tons of rookie records. He's got the full offseason with Sean McVay, the full offseason with Matt Stafford out there. So I definitely think that Puka Nacua is in the perfect spot to continue the dominance that we saw from him last season, especially considering there's a lot of still good targets around Puka Nacua that leave Puka Nacua with a lot of opportunity to score and put up those yardage for us. Moving on to the number 7 wide receiver, we're talking about A.J. Brown from the Philadelphia Eagles. We're looking at the wide receiver 8 in 2023. Weeks 3 through 8 last season, he put up 140 yards per game, and that was until they realized that Devontae Smith was still on the team. You're also looking at A.J. Brown being the number 1 wide receiver versus man coverage. He's a big, dominant force, mad athletic, and I think A.J. Brown, you would not be happy having him as your number 1 wide receiver. Moving on to the number 8 wide receiver, it's going to be the wide receiver I think had the best offseason among all wide receivers, and that's Drake London from the Atlanta Falcons. You're looking at that insane quarterback upgrade going from Desmond Ridder to an actually pretty decent quarterback in Kirk Cousins. We are still to see what they do with the Atlanta Falcons, but I do think on paper you're looking at a big upgrade in the quarterback. And as I said, he had the best offseason amongst wide receivers, and that includes the departure of his run-heavy head coach in Arthur Smith. So I think Drake London, you're going to be able to actually see him perform with good quarterback play for the first time in his career, and he's going to be a huge benefactor of it, as will you if you draft him. Before I continue on to the number 9 wide receiver, I want to make sure that if you like the content, you drop down and smash that like button. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscriptions bar and the notifications bell so you know when all of the information is coming out as soon as it hits the line, so you get that advantage on those idiots in your fantasy football league. Moving on to our number 9 wide receiver, we're talking about Garrett Wilson from the New York Jets. He's got tons of competition right now, which is what has lowered him down. Another thing that lowered him was the unhealthy Aaron Rodgers last season. He had a bad list of quarterbacks last year. But even though he had that extra, they added the extra competition in the wide receiver room around Garrett Wilson, he will still be the alpha number 1 wide receiver, albeit by age or just by health standpoint, with some of the other wide receivers coming onto the team having suffered in some injuries in the past, with Mike Williams not proven to stay healthy so far throughout a full season. So Garrett Wilson's going to be the alpha number 1 wide receiver, and if you can get a healthy Aaron Rodgers, even though he's 40 years old and coming off that Achilles tear, if you look at a healthy Aaron Rodgers, you got a really strong case for a top 10 easy wide receiver from Garrett Wilson. Now, finishing off this top 10 before we round up these last few wide receivers, we're going to go to Marvin Harrison Jr. from the Arizona Cardinals. He's the clear number 1 wide receiver in Arizona. Looking at the rest of the room in the wide receiver situation in Arizona right now, you're looking at Mike Wilson, Chris Moore, and Greg Dortch. If you get a healthy Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. may be the best wide receiver Kyler Murray has had in his entire career, and you've seen what Kyler Murray has been able to do with wide receivers in his past. Leaves you nothing but excitement for Marvin Harrison Jr. This was one of the best situations he could have went to, and your team could really benefit from it, drafting him as a top 10 wide receiver. Number 11 is going to be Brandon Ayuk from the San Francisco 49ers. He was number 2 in yards per catch last season, and he's still on the San Francisco 49ers right now, despite a lot of things pointing to him not remaining on the team, at least long term. Even if he does not stay for the San Francisco 49ers, you're looking at the number 1 outside wide receiver on one of the league's premier passing offenses. He's one of the best route runners in the league, and I think Brandon Ayuk definitely deserves this number 11 spot. And speaking of best route runners in the league, time to wrap up our top 12 with Davante Adams from the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, last year, yes, was definitely a down year for Davante Adams, but he's easily a top 15 wide receiver when you look at his statistics last season, even though he was a number 66 wide receiver overall in the catchable target rate. He had over 30% of his targets thrown to him last season deemed as uncatchable, and he's still efficient. He's still Davante Adams. You're looking at the upgrades in the quarterback position. Even though Gardner Minshew is not the best, you look at what he did for wide receivers like Michael Pittman Jr. and what he's done in his past. I think Davante Adams definitely benefits, like anybody would, from an upgrade at quarterback in Las Vegas, and Davante Adams can easily be a top 15 quarterback, if not better for you, if the Las Vegas Raiders offense can figure it out. Now, that's going to do it for our top 12 wide receivers. As I told you earlier, we're going to be going 13 through 24 in the next episode, as well as going to quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, all of that good noise. So make sure you guys stay tuned into the Huddle Chat Sports Network's YouTube channel. Make sure you stay tuned to us over on X, on the social media platform, as well as our Facebook. We're going to have tons of updates, tons of moving and shaking, and tons of fun. This is going to be the best season of the Huddle Chat Sports Network yet, and I'm glad to have you a part of it. Thank you so much for always being here and always showing that love. And if you're new to the channel, like I said, make sure you drop down, smash that like button because it helps so much more than you realize, and also hit that subscriptions bar and that notifications bell. But as always, everybody, keep your chin up and your attitude down. I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.
Thank you.